much money do you have saved up for a rainy day? Here's an eye-opening statistic. According to Bankrate.com, 28% of Americans have no emergency savings, nothing in the bank. 21% have barely enough to cover expenses for 3 months. That means about half of all Americans are unable to cushion the blow of a personal economic crisis. Very bad. Is the economy to blame, or is this just an example of irresponsible fiscal behavior? Joining us now is Greg McBride of Bankrate.com, who says it's all about keeping up with the Joneses, and Dan Mitchell with the Cato Institute says it's the government to blame. Good to see you both. Thanks so much for joining us. So, Greg, you say it's irresponsibility to blame for Americans' lack of savings. Just want to keep up with the Joneses and spend.
You're right, Maria. We have a long and storied history in this country of spending and keeping up with the Joneses and not making savings a priority. I mean, look, this is not confined to emergency savings. Same is true when we look at retirement savings. Americans are woefully undersaved on both of those fronts, and a lot of that is just because savings is not the priority. Too often, it's spending that becomes the priority.
So, Dan, you say you disagree. You say there are tax and economic factors at work. You want to blame government here.
Well, there's no doubt that some people think too much about today and not about tomorrow, so it's not like I disagree. But I also think we need to look at the role of government. Let's look at what happens if you save. The government taxes the stuffing out of you. We double tax savings, we double tax dividends, we double tax capital gains, we have a death tax, and that's just on the tax side of the fiscal equation. On the spending side of the fiscal equation, we used to save for health care, we used to save for education, for retirement. We now have government programs. Housing is another example. The government doesn't want anyone to have to save for a down payment, so we have programs for that. So between the tax and the spending programs of the federal government, I'm surprised anybody has any savings.
Yeah, that's really interesting because, when you first said it, you're going to blame government. I thought, well, how's that possible? How could you blame government for not saving your own money? But then you mentioned the tax increases and double taxation and the fact that rates are so low, making us lose money. It makes sense that there is also a role there.
And don't forget the spending side of the equation. I mean, think about it. We used to save a lot of money for big-ticket items like housing, health care, education, retirement. How much incentive is there to do that with all the different government handouts and programs and agencies and departments? In effect, the government's turning us into infants. We just sit there in a passive role and accept goodies from the government, and no wonder we're not doing the individually responsible things that we should be doing.
Unbelievable. Greg, what's the real incentive to save right now? What do you say to the government factors?
Well, I mean, I wouldn't disagree with any of those. Those are certainly hindrances, and this economic environment isn't helping either because wages are stagnant, and yet household expenses continue to creep up. I mean, that's why the economy can't get out of first gear. It's certainly not helping people save. But look, even during the depths of the recession, the absolute depths of the recession, I could walk through the airport at 5 o'clock in the morning, and the line to buy a $4 cup of coffee was longer than the line to get through security. So for 30 years, we've seen a perpetual decline in the savings rate, the rate of income that people are putting away for a rainy day. And, we're seeing the evidence of that now where only 1 in 4 American households actually has an adequate savings cushion. It just has to become a priority by paying yourself first.
I've always been a saver, but that comes from my mother. I mean, I think some of this stuff starts at home. Knowing to first pay yourself first when you get paid, knowing that at some point you need a nest egg for that rainy day. I mean, how do you educate people to do that?
The savers are always going to be savers, and I agree with you, Maria, that those people that they've got it ingrained in them, they're going to continue to do so, and those are the people that maybe those tax incentives have an effect on the margin in terms of how much they save or where they save it, but not the fact that they're saving.
But I would throw in, I would throw in that the culture that we're talking about here of saving is affected by government in the long run. You look at the savings rates that we used to have before the welfare state came about, before we had all these programs where government started paying for things that we used to save for. I think for ordinary people, that's huge. I mean, all the tax provisions, they maybe affect upper income people more than regular people, but the government programs, I think they've had a very negative effect on the culture of savings, the culture of deferred gratification among a lot of just ordinary people across the country.
What do you think it's going to take to improve the savings rate?
Individual responsibility, and that's the opposite of big government and the welfare state. Now, by the way, there is some good news. On the business side, of not personal finance, but business finance. We do have a lot of savings through corporate forms, sole proprietorships, partnerships, things like that. So it's not as if our economy is totally bereft of savings, and we also benefit from lots of savings coming into America from around the world. But nonetheless, I will agree with the other guest. Individuals should save more, but we have to get government out of the way.
Yeah. All right, we'll leave it there. Gentlemen, thank you very much. Great discussion and so important. We'll see you soon, guys. Thanks.